All right. What's up, y'all? Good afternoon, good evening. You end up seeing it some other time. Good morning, whatever it is, wherever you at. Peace, peace and love. Wanted to talk to you about this Donald Sterling controversy. Donald Sterling is the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers of the NBA, and we know there's a controversy because he and his girlfriend were having a phone conversation. Girlfriend is half black, half Mexican. She recorded this phone conversation uh, during which Mr. Sterling was telling her that basically he has a problem with her associating with black people in public. That it's not an issue for her to associate with black people in private, but he has an issue with her associating with black people in public. Um, there's this story's now all over the media. It initially came out through TMZ Sports. Now it's all over the media. Every media outlet is giving attention to the story, and that's an interesting thing. We need to always have our eyes open. So whenever the media is really pushing a certain story real hard, um, because we know that basically we all know that the more channels, the more websites, the more radio stations, newspapers that focus on a particular story, uh, the more important the story seems. Um, how much coverage the story gets directly influences how important we think the story is and how much attention we should pay to it. And so then you look at it. Okay, if the media is making a big deal out of this story, then you say, well, who is the media? Who owns and controls the media? If you don't know already, you do a little research. You see that people that are very similar to Donald Sterling own and control the media and have for a long time. Um, and so then we also know that the media, whether it's news media or whatever, doesn't present to you every single story, every single thing that's happening all around the world every day. They select things to focus on, and they give some things more attention than others. So every story that's presented to you is selected. So then you say to yourself, if every story is selected, why is this story selected? Based on what? Well, we don't know for sure why, except that we can pretty safely assume that for whatever reason, the people that own and control the media think that it's in their interest to show certain stories, to give attention to certain stories, and have people focus on certain stories. For some reason, they think that it benefits them. If they didn't think it benefited them, they wouldn't show the story, right? Make sense? So, for example, if ABC was being accused of some, misconduct or something like that, then ABC News probably wouldn't be telling that story uh, because it wouldn't benefit them to do so. It would be against their interest. Um, so when they're all telling you this story, you got to look at it and say why. Um, Now we know that, say for example, we'll take it back to Trayvon Martin, which was the big controversy, him and the Zimmerman verdict and the whole thing of Zimmerman not being arrested and stand your ground. That all became a huge story, and people became really concerned about it to the point where you don't even have to say Trayvon Martin. You just say the word Trayvon. You just say the first name Trayvon. Almost anybody in America knows who you're talking about. The story got that much coverage. And it was basically because the media, by giving this so much attention, basically told everybody that this story was important. This is something you need to think about and form an opinion on. So the media doesn't tell us what to think, but it does, in effect, tell us what to think about. Now, to juxtapose the Trayvon Martin situation with another racial situation that you would think would be important to black people, you can compare it to the Oscar Grant story. Now, Oscar Grant is the young brother that was murdered by the police in San Francisco, and they made the movie about him, Fruitvale Station. Um, Now, up until that movie came out, his story really didn't get a lot of attention nationally. Um, and one of the reasons being, and I would say the main reason, is that when the verdict of that shooting came in, when those police officers were found not guilty, that very day there was another event that was being covered much more heavily by the media, and that the media had decided was more important and they were going to have you focus on. And that decision was LeBron James' decision to go play for the Miami Heat, which brings back to the Dan Gilbert thing. Um, and so those two things happened the same day, and everybody in America, maybe many people throughout the world, knew that LeBron James had decided to go play for the Miami Heat. A lot less of us knew that these police officers were acquitted of murdering a young man. So one thing was made to be very important to all of us and for us to focus on, while another thing we totally didn't focus on. Now, funny enough, uh, being a magician or an illusionist, their art or their craft or whatever you want to call it is based on that very same principle of having the audience, focus on one particular thing while what they're actually doing goes unnoticed to you right before your eyes. And some people say that that's the same thing that a politician does. And this is a classic sort of dynamic and a mechanism that's used by people to accomplish whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish. One classic tactic is have you focus on one thing while I do something else. So for that, I felt torn about even doing this video because I don't want to focus on the story too much, but at the same time I see so many comments going around, people saying things that I find kind of bugged out. So I felt like I wanted to address it, and frankly I didn't feel like writing this much. And also, if I did, it would probably be in vain because black people don't read. And I'm generalizing. Obviously, some of us read, but let's keep it funky, man. A lot of y'all, you don't read. You don't read. When the last time you sat down and read a serious book? Keep it real with yourself. You don't have to tell me the truth, but tell the truth to yourself. And so, so I took to video. Not because I like to hear myself talk. But yeah. So now, as this is happening, like I said, black people, we in our feelings. People are really upset and getting mad and emotional and saying that the players should boycott and to send a message. So let's examine that. Now, whenever you decide to take an action, you should be deciding to take that action based on the expected outcome of the action, right? Makes sense? I don't know if I explained that in a way that was not direct, not clear. But quite frankly, it's like, okay, you turn on the stove because you want the fire to come on, right? That's why you turn on the stove. You don't turn on the stove. You don't turn the stove knob so that the refrigerator door would open, because that's not going to make the refrigerator door open. So you do things based on the purpose that you have in mind. So let's say these players boycotted the playoffs and to send a message. What would the message be? The message would be for white people to make sure that they're not caught saying certain things that they don't want us to hear. Because basically you're saying that we should punish this guy for saying something in a venue where other people were able to find out what he really thinks. So we have to ask ourselves now, does it benefit, is it a good thing that black people found out what Donald Sterling really thinks, or is it a bad thing? Okay, now, if it's a good thing, if you think it's a good thing that we found out what he thinks, which is what I think, then it's like, now the next question is, Do you think it's a good thing for us to be able to find out what other white people think as well? White people that are in power, that have the power over the lives of a lot of black people. I would say that it is positive and is beneficial to us because I think knowledge is power. And whenever you get access to the truth, then that's a good thing. That's a win. Um, Sometimes you give somebody enough rope to hang themselves, so to speak. Um, you let somebody get comfortable so that they start making mistakes. Um, if we're sending a message to white people to, hey, tighten up your game, I don't see how white people tightening up their game, white supremacists tightening up their game. I don't see how that benefits black people. If you do think that that benefits black people, then you can explain to me how you think that benefits us. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do anything or that the players shouldn't do anything, but I'm just saying that when you decide to take a certain action, you have to know what the result of the action is supposed to be, and is that a result that benefits you in any way? Um, and that's where the getting out of your feelings and thinking like an intelligent adult. That's where that comes in. Um, it's the difference between reacting to things and responding to things. Now, a reaction. What is a reaction? What does it mean to react? Well, to react means ultimately to be affected by something from the outside, um, to have it affect you in a way that you don't really control, right? In a way that's almost like a reflex that you wasn't able to consciously decide for yourself. So, so they say for every action there's an equal and positive reaction, right? So, like if you throw a ball against the wall, then the action of the ball hitting the wall, the reaction is the ball bounces off the wall, right? So the ball has no control over the fact that it's going to bounce off this wall. Once it's thrown, it has to react that way. And so, in a sense, the ball is a slave to the person that is proactive, that set the first action in motion, right? It's a slave to their will, because I'm saying, if I'm gonna say that, all right, I know that your reaction is gonna be this, like the doctor who hits your knee with the gavel and knows that your knee is gonna fly up. So for that moment, your knee is a slave to the will of that doctor. The doctor's saying, I know that if I hit your knee is gonna fly up, whether you want it to or not. So with us and our reactions, it's a similar thing. Um, Instead of responding, sitting back and coming up with a thoughtful response to certain actions and saying, okay, all right, you're coming from here and this is what you represent. What does that mean to me? All right, now what do I want to do about this? Then once I figure out what I want to do, how will I do it? That's responding. And that's what's called being responsible. When you hear the word responsible and responsibility, it's your ability to respond. Uh, in medical terms, if you have a reaction to something, to a prescription or a treatment, then that means that you being affected, once again that word affected, negatively by what's the treatment or the medication. If you're responding to the medication, that means that it's working, that it's benefiting you. So that's another way, another example, just for you to look at those terms and think about the difference between reacting and responding. In order to respond effectively, you have to get out your feelings. You have to get out your feelings because response is really up here. You know, response is an act of will. Reacting is an act of reflex. Your reflexes are not your will. That's just something that is almost instinctive and you just do without any thought. And sometimes your reflexes will serve you or your instincts. Other times they will hurt you. There's times when your natural reflex will be something that will hurt you. Now, I hear a lot of black people talk about Donald Sterling hates black people. Now, I don't know if he does hate black people or not. I do know that at no point on that tape did he say that he hated black people. He never said that. In fact, if he if anything, the statements that he made in terms of his feelings about black people were, funny enough, were all positive. He was saying things, hey, I love black people. I love everybody. I admire this black person. I admire that black person. Um, he was saying, but basically, there's rules to this shit, and everybody got their place, and this is, the code of conduct, you know. And so that's very enlightening. It's very important. This is the type of stuff that black people have to be able to listen to and process unemotionally, because he's telling you that white supremacy is not personal, you know. Uh, White supremacy is the enemy of black people and black power. Um, I would say in general, the white race is the enemy to the black race, and that doesn't apply on an individual to individual level. There are white people that are not my enemies, um, and and I am not the enemy of every white person. Um, there's some white people that I know that I'm friends with that I think are genuinely for me, that genuinely have my best interest at heart, and vice versa. But generally, if we're looking at these races as collective entities, then there's no way around the fact that these bodies of people are enemies. And what makes them enemies? It's not hatred. In nature, let's say the lion and the gazelle. The lion and the gazelle are enemies, right? The lion hunts down the gazelle, is looking to kill the gazelle every chance he gets, right? Now, is the lion looking to kill the gazelle because he hates the gazelle? No, the lion doesn't hate the gazelle. Um, the lion is looking to kill the gazelle because the death of the killing the gazelle benefits the lion. By killing the gazelle, the lion is able to eat. So it's the same thing with white supremacy. White supremacy is white global domination of any and all things, all areas of human activity. In order for white people to dominate the globe and have at their disposal all the resources and power that they want and feel they need, uh, they must oppress black people, and black people must be unempowered. And so, and it's not based on hatred. This is just the calculation that's made by white supremacists. That hey, in order for us to have this, these people, them being empowered, that stands in our way. And so these are the things that we need to do to keep them in control and keep them under our control and keep ourselves on top. Um, Basically, how does the gazelle uh, neutralize the aggressions of the lion? Does the gazelle try to change the lion's mind? Does the gazelle have the lion try to reconsider? No. The the gazelle, the only thing the gazelle can do is make it so that the lion can't eat him. So he has to either run faster than the lion or be aware of the lion before the lion sneaks up on him or whatever. He has to neutralize the ability of the lion to catch him, kill him, and eat him. So it's the same thing with black people and white supremacy. Black people, it is foolish of you to worry about how white people feel about you, to try to change white people's minds about how they feel about you, uh, about trying to have them see you as human. Not only is it foolish, it lacks dignity. It lacks dignity for you to be trying to prove to somebody else that you are equal to them, especially somebody who is responsible for most of the greatest crimes against humanity and nature and any sort of moral code you can think of. The people that are probably the most grossly guilty of the worst offenses. Uh, you trying to prove to yourself, to them, that you're equal to them. That says a lot about you and the inferiority that you feel. You shouldn't be looking for their acceptance. You shouldn't be looking to change their minds. And that's a foolish pursuit because you can't control how other people think. The only thing you can control is what they are able to do to you. So, for example, it's the same reason why you have a lock on the door to your house. Because you don't have the time. It's not practical. It doesn't make sense for you to try to convince the whole world to never try to break into your house. So instead, what you do is you take measures to make it so that people can't break into your house, right? So it's the same thing with white supremacy. Uh, we have to take measures to neutralize the ability of white people in general, particularly white supremacists, to oppress us. So then we have to ask ourselves, how does the Clippers boycotting the playoffs, how does that help us neutralize that ability? Does it help us neutralize that ability? Also, we have to become people like Michael Jackson said, the late great Michael Jackson. He gave us a real jewel um, when he made that song "Man in the Mirror." You know what I'm saying? And the whole song was about, hey, if you want to make this change, start with the man in the mirror. And that's so true because we so busy looking out there at what other people are doing and what other black people should do, we don't see what it is that we can do. Now, and what happens is when you do that, you end up making yourself a hypocrite without knowing it. So I see black people saying that the Clippers should boycott the playoffs and not go to work, not do their job because their bosses are racist. But how many of you have bosses that are racist? How many of you work for racist corporations, racist organizations and institutions that have proven track records of racism? But you don't boycott your job. I mean, I can tell you if you work for Bank of America, if you work for J.P. Morgan, Chase, if you work for what was the Lehman Brothers, if you work in the educational system, that's destroying the minds of young black people and, you know, a part of the school to prison pipeline. If you, I mean, the list goes on, man. I mean, any occupation you name is basically owned and controlled by proven racists. So you can't condemn NBA players for them going to work to do their job because they know that their bosses are racist. When you still go to your job, that makes you a hypocrite, and you take away from your message. Your message then lacks integrity, and we want to be people of integrity, right? It's very important, you know. Um, so these are just some important things for us to think about. Now, Dan Gilbert, I'm about to call him again. Donald Sterling, as you also may know, is in line to receive an award from the NAACP next month. And so, why that's significant, why I bring that up, is because if this tape wasn't leaked, then this will be a white man that was seen as and is looked at as being a friend to black people, right? But only because this tape came out do we now know that he feels differently. So now, by that evidence of that, we can look and say that, well, then perhaps a lot of the people that we see that seem one way on the surface really are a different way. And so, therefore, it also doesn't make sense for us to have this feeling about this one guy, because this guy is just evidence that, hey, we really don't know where any of these people stand and what their real beliefs are until something happens that exposes how they really feel. Uh, the the dude Dan Gilbert, who's the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, I don't think any of us, the general public, knew that he was a racist until LeBron James made his decision to go play for another owner, and then then the racism that he really feels it came out. It was exposed. Now, interestingly enough, that happened, and no one asked for the Cleveland Cavaliers to boycott that team. I wonder why. I wonder why that's different from this situation. No one criticizes Kyrie Irving or any of those guys for continuing to play for the Cavaliers. So I don't know. So again, there's that inconsistency and lack of integrity, and so that's why it also is important to be thoughtful people. Uh, the fastest way to speak without integrity and be a hypocrite is to not take the time to think about, well, wait a minute, does what I'm saying now, does this match up with my actions? Is this consistent with what I said in other situations that are similar to this? Let me rethink this. Let me sit, and instead of reacting, I'm going to respond. Um, I could go on and on about this situation. There's actually a lot of it, a lot to break down. But I see that I'm coming in at about 25 minutes, and I know our people's attention span is not particularly long in a lot of instances. I'm not saying this to be insulting. I'm just acknowledging what I see to be the truth. Um, so I'm gonna cut it off here. But if you want to get into the issue a little further, hit me up. You know where I'm at. Peace and love. God bless.